for the Waunakee Community School District. Today is Monday, August 8th. We went into closed session at 6:30. It is now about 7:05. We have everybody here except for Julie Wayner, who's on vacation. So you have in front of you the minutes of the July 11th, 2016 regular meeting. Any questions or changes to those minutes? Otherwise, we look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded by Jack and Joan. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 6, any changes to the agenda?
So the only change to the agenda is with regards to the consent agenda. There's 3 items, F, G, and H, which just require a roll call vote. So when we get to the consent agenda, we'll act on those items that do not require a roll call vote. Then we'll act on F, G, and H as one vote, but do those under a roll call.
Okay. Yes.
This is where you pull out those.
Oh, we would do that
We'll
later
do
in the
that.
consent agenda.
Yeah, any items at that point when we get to the consent agenda can be pulled out at that time, at the time the motion's made.
Okay, noting those changes and the fact we've got updated staff changes in front of us, we need a motion to approve of the agenda. Oops. I'm sorry, I heard Joan's voice
Let
first.
Joan.
Okay, Joan, and then Jack. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 7, public comments. I have one individual who would like to address the board, Cindy Lindquist.
Hi, I am going to represent the Teachers Association tonight, and I have 2 things on your agenda that we just wanted to make a couple comments about. Both of them, we're just really glad that last month you pulled a few things or wanted more discussion on a couple items. One was the testing schedule. That's really, really important to our students, to our parents, and to us, and we're really glad that you were making, having more discussion about it and pulled it out of the consent agenda last month. I'm hoping, I know it's really close, we know it's close to the school year, so probably nothing will happen this year, but I'm hoping that you'll reinstate the testing committee and get some more voices on what's really being effective in the classroom, what tests are driving our instruction, what's helpful for us and for kids. Parents ask teachers often, why are you taking these, and why are my kids taking this test? We have to represent parents too sometimes, and so I think some teacher voices on that testing schedule would be really important. The PLC process right now, we are doing so much common assessment that we're just feeling like maybe our assessments could take the place of some of the standardized stuff. So if we could revisit having a committee on that, that would be good. The other one is the teacher retirement compensation. And I'm hoping that you spend even more time on that. That's important to retain really quality teachers. We have great teachers. We're losing a lot of them. And whatever we can do to keep people here longer is great. So just thank you for spending more time discussing those 2 items and keep teachers' voices in both of them. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the banked points
Yes.
discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board at this point with respect to items on tonight's agenda? Okay, thank you. Item 8, administrative reports, starting with board reports. Any individuals want to share anything from the last month? Okay, Dave.
I will say I did do a walkthrough through most of the construction sites the last 2 weeks, and you really got to get out to the intermediate school. They did put all that nice hand-done glass work by the students, and I did learn the students can actually make things out of glass that look like things unlike what I did, and the rest of us did. You can actually recognize what they were trying to accomplish, but it looks great. It was good to see the classrooms, the whiteboards are all up, the painting is getting done, and I think it's important to get out there, especially with the water retention issue. You should see what it's like, because we're probably going to have to make some sort of decision in the near future, and it's going to be important that I think we all have that view of what the ground site is like. But if you want to see it before it opens, you're probably going to have to do it really quick.
Did
Yeah.
you want to make a comment on that?
Sure, there are a couple things. Later on in the agenda, I'll talk about the open houses that we're looking at for, while we're talking, but I'll do it right now. At the intermediate school, we're looking at October 2nd as an open house for the community. That's a Sunday afternoon. We don't have the time set for that. And then at Heritage, we're looking at September 19th in the evening. That's during the week. But with regards to follow up to what Dave said, I would encourage you to go out to the intermediate school. Staff moved in last week, so it was fun to be out there and watching just the excitement as far as them finding their things and finding their space and unpacking. They have registration coming up. Cindy, do you know offhand when registration is? There's some. I'll get you the date for registration, because when the parents and kids are out there, Chris Hutzel and Tim Omertz are going to have student ambassadors giving tours of the school. So that might be a good day. That's throughout the day and into the evening, so it might be a good opportunity if you want to stop out at that time to actually get a full tour and a view of all the things that are happening in the building.
And I'd just like to echo Dave's comment. I've been out there twice in the past 3 weeks. It just takes your breath away. And it's just so impressive how this facility is going to make things so much better for the kids and the staff. And the second time, I couldn't believe the things I missed the first time. It's just, there's so much to take in. It's just, the community is, I think it's really going to love this facility.
Yep. So just to reiterate those dates, September 19th is Heritage in the evening, and then October 2nd at the intermediate school. That's a Sunday afternoon. What we are going to, it doesn't conflict with the Packer game, so that was one thing we looked at because it's on a bye week. So we thought that would be the best opportunity. We're going to be putting together a postcard that we send to all community residents through mail to invite them to come out to the site. And so we'll put up both of those nights on there because we want to, I think that's probably the number one question I get when I'm out in the community is how is the school going and when are you going to have an open house? So
And the registration, you didn't know the date?
registration, I thought, does anybody in the back know when Chris's registration is at the intermediate school?
On Tuesday, so she must be Wednesday.
Is it next Wednesday?
She also
I'll send it
Oh,
out.
yes,
Yeah, you
yes,
send
she's
it.
Tuesday, she's same as I am.
Yeah, I think it's next Tuesday, or yes, next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, I'll send you the date for it, just to clarify. I think it's next Tuesday, but that's the date I know she has students out there giving tours to kids and parents as they're coming, so. Rebecca, you'll help me remember to do that. That would be awesome.
Okay, are there any other comments that board members would like to share? Okay, hearing that, on to item B. Board member coverage first day of school. You see in your packet, and actually Rebecca's got a copy of that form with her. So I guess before everybody leaves tonight, if they could make sure that they put their name on any particular building that they would like to participate in, that would be great. Or we can pass it around right now and people can sign up on whatever your calendars look like.
Why don't we just pass it around the table, Peggy, and then
Okay.
if we can catch people at the end.
Sounds good.
Super. Great.
Okay, administrative reports.
Can I ask,
Oh, yes.
when is the staff first day where you're doing the
Yep, that's on
meet and
the,
greet?
that's on the 29th. That's the all-staff welcome. That starts at 7:45
Thank you.
a.m.
In the PAC.
in the PAC. Correct. So that's August 29th is when all staff report, so
Thank you.
you're welcome to come to that. And I'll send something out in my weekly memo to remind you about what's happening that time.
Okay. Now on to the curriculum presentation, concurrent enrollment programs.
Yeah, Tim Schell is here to talk about concurrent enrollment, particularly things we've had some conversations about our CAP programs and other dual credit options. And Tim's going to give us an overview of what's happening in that area of our curriculum. Thanks, Tim.
So what I just passed out was a quick summary on our courses at the high school that are concurrent, what we call concurrent enrollment courses as offered in the 2015-2016 school year. Now, there are several different ways that our students in high school can obtain college credit or some kind of advanced standing. What we're reporting on tonight is just one subset of those ways. One of the biggest ways is one that we're not talking about tonight, which is advanced placement courses where students take a course like AP US History, AP Chemistry, AP Language and Composition that's aligned with a kind of national curriculum that is benchmarked against collegiate expectations. In those courses, students have the opportunity by examination to earn credit, and then depending on the institution of higher education's policies, they may get a certain amount of credit or placement as a result of this. But what I'm sharing with you tonight are what we call concurrent or dual enrollment courses. And these are situations where a student is enrolled both in the high school and they have the opportunity through that same course to enroll in an institution of higher learning. One version of that we don't have included in this report are youth options programs. That would be if a student through us was funded to take a UW, Edgewood, Madison College course. Those are not really our courses, they're not in our course catalog. But these are all courses that are in our course catalog. And they fall really into two buckets. One are courses that are articulated with Madison College, although it's possible the next year or two you will see some courses in the ag area that would be dual credit courses. They'll come forward as proposals. It'll probably be with Southwest Tech, since Madison College doesn't have those kinds of programs. But for now, all of our Tech College dual credit courses are with Madison College. And of course, the CAP program through UW Oshkosh. And there's really two pieces here in the table. At the bottom, you can see our roster of local courses. Now, in the last school year, we had a total of 510 students out of our 1,210 or so at the high school who took at least one course that was a dual credit course. Now, not all of those chose to take it for the college credit, but the course expectations are the same whether you're taking it for college credit or not. And they really cover a pretty wide range. We have 3 that are in single digits, and they're 3 very different courses. So one is our Spanish 5 course, that's a world language course that's aligned with UW Oshkosh. The second is senior algebra. This is a math course for upperclassmen that's aligned with Madison College. And it's an avenue for kids that are intending to go on to Madison College to take final math and take it in a way that is likely to exempt them from any possibility of remedial math at Madison College. The third is marketing, and we have some different courses in our CTE area that are affiliated with Madison College, but the marketing, again, is affiliated with the marketing classes at Madison College. And you can see just those courses alone have a pretty significant share of our enrollment. So because the type of course that count for dual credit are pretty diverse, it also means that kind of the snapshot of our student body that takes these courses is also pretty diverse. So I kind of want to direct your attention up to the top table where we get into our percentages. And the first thing that I want to point out is over the last 5 years, there has been a rising trend of the percentage of our students at the high school taking these types of courses. It's partly because we have more interest in kids to take these courses. It's also because we've had courses that have been on our books for quite some time, but maybe not in partnership with Madison College or Oshkosh, where we've now entered into that partnership. Classic example would be our French 5 and Spanish 5, which up until 2015, 2016, did not carry a college credit option. But because we went through that CAP process a year ago, that was an option available to students. So that's one reason why that top line number is growing. But you can see that our percentage of students of color, our percentage of low-income students taking part in these courses is not that different than the percentage of the student body overall. The only section of the population that we would really kind of measure, monitor for disaggregation that doesn't participate as fully are students with disabilities. So this is just kind of a look in a nutshell. And again, these cover lots of different courses. The benefit to the student obviously is they have the opportunity to earn credit in high school. The other benefit to it is not only the credit, but the advantage of taking a course, knowing you're taking a course in high school that is a dual credit with an institution of higher learning, knowing that you're a little more experienced for those expectations, whether you're going on to a 4-year or a technical college. Any questions?
I have one
Thank you.
question, and it relates to, in order for these courses to qualify, are there certain things that are additional responsibilities or certificates or that the teachers need? I mean, so that the teachers who teach something that's also a dual credit, they have to achieve something as well?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. It does vary depending on the course and the institution.
Okay.
But, there's two pieces. There's a formal credentialing and approval process. We can't just have anybody teach these courses. Now, in general, our standards are good, and so if we have, again, not to name names, but to name a name, Sandra Meinholz for marketing. We've got good teachers in our district, and so in general, if we have teachers teaching our courses, they'll be acceptable to the institution of higher education, but they actually have to submit their paperwork and be approved.
By that institution?
By Madison College
Yeah,
or by
yes.
us, because when they're doing this, they're actually an instructor not only for us,
Okay, yeah.
but for Madison College or UW Oshkosh. Now, in the case of UW Oshkosh and the other UW system campuses that offer this, there is the expectation that the instructor must have the master's. So that's an additional thing. And you may remember when we were hiring
Right.
last year for Sherry Thompson and Elaine Simmons, that was a consideration in our hiring process. The other thing is there is an expectation of some kind of continuing education. So periodically, our instructors for the Madison College courses have to take workshops, usually over the summer, although not always, with Madison College. And the same thing for our world language teachers in the UW Oshkosh courses. So there's an initial approval process, and then there's an ongoing relationship.
Any other questions for Tim? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, department reports.
Department reports tonight, we have Facilities Department and Technology, so Joe Bellamo and Herb Hobrook, if you guys can come forward. Before they answer any questions with regards to the reports that you have in board book, I just want to commend both of these gentlemen and their teams for all the work that they've done this summer. When I would say that their plates are full, it would be an understatement, particularly as we look at some of the work that's happening in all of our schools, particularly at the new intermediate school, Heritage School, and then just us getting ready for the start of school here in a few weeks. I've also shared with this group before, but it's very evident these two have to work together quite a bit because the merging of technology and facilities is very much intertwined these days. So I appreciate all that you do and your teams, and they've done a phenomenal job. So with that, I'll turn it over to them to either share some of their highlights or answer any questions that you may have.
You make me go first, I will. I really don't have anything to add. I think I've said it all. If there's anything at all, it's that Findorf. Findorf has been wonderful to work with on my end. There's things that happen in construction projects. There just is. They get difficult, and they've always been there to somehow work together with us and make it happen. That's about it. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
I appreciated your report. I would say that I like the level of detail and recognition for individuals for the work they're doing, so thank you for that.
I guess I would just echo what Joe said. Working with Findorf has been a pleasure. They're very thorough and they're very easy to work with, and they're very flexible. when technology comes in, they work with us pretty well, so.
And you've worked a lot with Westfall and GlobalCom.
Yeah,
A lot,
yes,
and then
yeah,
all the
yes.
technology pieces have really been a big piece,
sure.
and I would say both of you.
Yep.
And they've been a good partner as we've worked with them throughout the project as well.
I would agree. Other than that, any questions?
It looks like our security system will be up and running district-wide pretty soon.
Camera, yes,
Yes.
all of the cameras are tested, ready to go. The last piece for most of the schools will be to put in a server that is an NVR, which is a network video recorder. So,
That's a very exciting project for us to have completed this summer as we really expand our security camera systems in all of our schools. Obviously, we've had it at the high school for a number of years, but making sure that we have better coverage there and then making sure that we're also adequately covered at our other schools has been a very much appreciated project, and thank the board for supporting that as we kind of pull it together.
Yep.
It was one additional piece to add to the work this summer, but
Right.
it was well worth it.
I would agree.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3, the assessment plan, which is something that we wanted to bring back for.
I'm going to ask Tim just to step forward with regards to the assessment plan. This was presented last month as part of the consent agenda as really a reporting out information as far as what we were planning for assessments for the upcoming school year. This was pulled from the agenda last month just for some additional consideration and thought. We've had numerous conversations. I know, Joan, that we've had some discussions per some of the concerns. I think they came forward with regards to amount of assessments, particularly as we looked at some of the formative assessments and the screeners that we have throughout the year, particularly towards the end of the year, and the third iteration of those and how they're used. I'll let Tim fill in any blanks, and Joan, any questions that you have, but our recommendation tonight for consideration is to move their plan forward as it was presented, with the caveat being exactly, I think, as Cindy had articulated, to have some additional dialogue and input from staff as we really start to look at the instruments that we use and how we use the data that we receive. Tim?
If I could just kind of do a follow-up. I did meet with Randy in between, and being summer, and it's just not possible to get that kind of data. But as I said, I really would like all of us to be able to go to those listening sessions, and when the testing questions come up, have some concrete examples of how they're being used and the necessity of them. And I understand that there are many classroom teachers, because of their level of expertise and use, they're not going to use them necessarily as much as some. I think our specialists are probably, a greater use person. I would like to have the principals kind of weigh in on it. I love the fact that Cindy brought up getting the testing committee back together. And if it's possible, and again, I don't want to add a lot of extra work, but in that spreadsheet, if we could add a column, how it's used. I think that could help all of us justify, their use. And to be really sure, if we need a test for RTI identification, is the map or is the star the best one? Not just look at justifying what we've done, but maybe, a broader picture. We have this need. Is there an instrument out there that might better do it, as Cindy alluded to with all the common assessments? So, I would just like a year to really, bring this all back out on the table with the testing committee and all the parties that use the test. Thank you. Again, I don't want to add a lot of extra work, but it helps.
It comes up a lot.
Well, and I think this has been a good discussion, and there'll be some things we'll be doing as a result of this. I mean, it's been 3 years since we've had a teacher committee look at this, so I think we will certainly bring that committee back. It's very clear from what's happened over the last 2 months, we really need to expand the membership of the committee. That was pretty much a committee of core content area teachers before. because they were the primary customers of the test, information, I should say. But I think we probably need to expand that to teachers who may be impacted instructionally by the assessment time, but really typically don't use the data from the assessments. They have a perspective, I think, to share too, so we'll be doing that. We will be going back and doing another comparison about where our assessment practices compare to peer districts to see where we stand. So we'll be doing all of that, and I think in particular for the middle school, when we made the change from MAP to STAR in the lower grades as a result of the last committee, we kind of put a placeholder out that it would come back to the middle school after we had STAR in the elementary and intermediate schools for a few years. So I think there'll be an additional layer in the process for the middle school, just to kind of look at the map, because there's no question that was still out there as a pending item. And when we look at assessments that take time, the math is certainly one of those compared to the STAR. So, you know, I think one thing I would like some feedback from the board on. I understand the interest in seeing how these are used, especially when, you know, we have a document, you know, for listening sessions and things like that. Right now, all we do is we put like little special characters in that indicate, is it universal screening, is it state mandated? Now, we discontinued it the last year. We used to have an annual testing and assessment report that as part of it went through each assessment and explained its purpose. So, you know, maybe one option is to add some more detail with us, maybe bring back that report. That could maybe help do that as well. We used to have that. But, you know, we'll definitely, it's something I think working through the curriculum committee process, we can find out kind of what's the best grain size for the information.
Mark?
Well, another thing I'd be interested in is, and when I saw this grid, it's extremely detailed except for one thing, and that was a tabulation of how many hours of testing per grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be interested in how that compares to the national norm,
Mm-hmm.
or recommendation
Yes.
by various national educational groups. I've done some informal reading, and I think it'd be worthwhile looking at that to determine, are we overboard? Are we where we want to be? Do we have redundancies? I mean, I look at here and I see multiple tests in multiple areas, but I'm assuming they don't replicate, maybe test different things, but are they redundant in what they do? And so I think that needs to be part of that discussion as well. How much time is spent at it, and is it time well spent or not?
Yeah, we can do that, and the kind of the testing guidelines piece that came out from the federal government last year.
Right.
We can add that as a point of comparison
That'd be
too,
awesome.
so we can kind of see where we are in relation to that. Any other questions on this?
Okay, then we need to make a motion to approve of the testing program schedule for next year, since we have pulled it out of the consent agenda
I
last time.
would move to approve the testing schedule for the year.
Second.
Moved by Jones, seconded by Mark. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, you actually handled some of your announcements. Any other correspondence?
Yep, I think I addressed my correspondence earlier, so we can move on.
Okay. On to agenda item 9, committee reports, starting with the budget committee.
I'm sure Steve will have a whole bunch of other stuff. I just wanted to make a comment about the handbook and the increase of the pay for the coaches or our co-curricular people, whether that's band or whatever. That's been lagging for a long time. The base is at what, about 32? And our normal base, teacher base is at 38. So what the push there is to increase that to get to the normal base so it's more consistent. And I don't think they've had a raise in what they do there for 7, 8 years, something like that. So something we talked about for a few years here, and we finally got in place, and it's going to be stepped in. That's where the $2,000 per year until it gets to the level where it matches the base. So
Did we already include that in the third draft of the budget, Steve? That was approved last month. So that's kind of what Gary's talking about, is that that step increment that we added in last month to that part of the budget. So that'll carry forward as we start to look at subsequent versions and into the salary increases for the fall.
You have a comment on that, I'm sure.
The only thing I would mention is the committee meeting on the 11th was right before the board meeting, so we didn't have an opportunity to get the minutes ready for the meeting. But the action item was taken care of in July.
Right.
And the other items will be moving forward as the final development of the budget takes place this fall.
Perfect.
Okay, does anybody have, oops, Mark?
And so with the recommendation was unanimous for a $2,000 increase, so that's $38,000 a year then to bring it about?
To bring it up to that.
Right.
Right.
And about how long do you figure that will take to get them up to where it currently is? 3 years?
3.
Okay.
32.
The other will probably go up to.
And then it'll be 4.
Okay, any other questions on the budget committee minutes and report? On to co-curricular program.
Okay. Aaron, if you can come forward, please.
And it appears that the.
Aaron's Day.
Aaron's on the
The
agenda
minutes of the
tonight.
meeting were in our packet, and then there's also a co-curricular program report.
Yeah, there's a report there. There's also, set out inside it, because I didn't get him time, the information time to put in the updated report, a more detailed financial report from the Touchdown Club, and then the Boys Lacrosse Booster Club. So that should be in the piles of paper that you have there in front of you.
Before you get started, Aaron, just as a reminder to the board, the co-curricular report generally comes in front of the board once a year. It's a review of what's happened in the past year as far as all of our activities. Some of the things that Aaron has pulled together is just based on the feedback that we were able to provide him of what we've heard is asked for from the board over the last couple iterations of this report. You can see in your notes that there were some conversations with regards to some additional information that was requested, which part of that was the lacrosse and the football boosters supplemental information that is at your seat as you're looking at it tonight. I did talk to Julie Weiner as well prior to, she sent me an email while she was on vacation with regards to feedback on things on the agenda tonight. The one thing she asked in subsequent versions of the report is multiple years of data to see if we're growing or decreasing with regards to our enrollment. I dittoed the items that were questioned by the co-curricular committee, and then asked a question about where we were with tracking gate receipts from one year to the next, and I shared with her that would be something that would be coming in subsequent report once we get through our audit process, and Steve and Aaron can work together on that aspect and bring it forward through a budget committee in the future. But with that, I'd like to just turn it over to Aaron. Maybe Aaron, you can just give kind of a review of how your first year in Waunakee has been before you dive into this report, as you walked in pretty much a year ago at this time with the ground running and all the activities on the ground already. So you've been here now a year, so we've been happy to have you and just wanted to hear kind of how things are going, and then we can open it up for questions on your report to the board.
Sure. Well, so far this year, things have been going good, very fast. It's actually hard to believe that it's already been, I guess, a year. I think I got approved at the August board meeting, so it's probably right at about a year right now. The big thing, my big goal, when I spoke, met with Randy and Connie, and when we were talking about this position, I told them my first year was mostly about observing and seeing where the programs are right now, and trying to get to know as much of the programs and what they have as possible, and trying to get into the community and the groups that they have there. So that was kind of the big goal, the overarching goal, the theme for me this year was getting to know the coaches, the players, the community, the boosters, and how all those operate, because every community is unique with how those relationships work. So it's important that as an athletic administrator, you understand what makes that community tick in those ways. So that was my big overarching goal for the year. But yeah, it was a lot of highs. We had a lot of on the field success. We had a lot of off-of-field success with our athletes, you know, whether it was going to the Cole Center for basketball or, you know, having an athlete sign a Division I scholarship to play and, or things like that. So we had a lot of great successes that way, and, you know, WIA Scholar Athlete recognition for a couple athletes too. So those were some highlights of the year. And then really excited about this Warrior project coming up with Warrior Stadium. So that's something that's I've been looking forward to. So those are kind of big overarching things. A couple of things I wanted to just address. When the co-curricular committee met, there were some questions. So hopefully that football information helps shed some light on that there. The other one that you'd asked about was boys basketball. Speaking with them, and one of the questions was about the outing. The way they reported it out, all monies made gets turned to a scholarship. So that's why that really zeroes out, I guess, in the way they report that. So the money that they make, that was Pat Keenan and Tim Murray, who are kind of president and treasurer of the booster clubs. And I made a couple notations, just hand notations in the report, just because of how it was submitted. I couldn't really get in there and edit it cleanly in there. One of the other things towards the end of the report, which I actually think in future years are probably going to move forward more towards the front, I think, which is one of the strengths of Waunakee. If you just look, it's really a small thing. I think it's probably easy to overlook, but I really want to make note of it. You know, trends everywhere in every school is more and more single sport athletes, and Waunakee we have a large number of athletes that play one sport. About 40% of we have 81 students out for what we call Category A activities, but we also have a pretty significant number of students that are also out for something else. So we have a very good participation rate for a school of almost 1,200 in the high school, where you have nearly 40% of those students are out for an activity, an extracurricular. It's something that I preach to the community, I preach to our teachers, I preach to our coaches that, you know, to me, co-curriculars, whether it's the performing arts or whether it's on a game field, are the second half of education. And so we have quite a large number of students taking advantage of that, and so that's something I think we should, as a district, be proud of and celebrate. So we've got a high participation rate there, and even you look at the number of two-sport athletes that we have. And on that same page, it's if you're looking on there, it's the second to last page. Above that is the revenues. The one thing I want to point out is the WIA tourney receipts. Now, those are games that we host that Waunakee is playing in, but it's also when we host like sectionals. Last year, we hosted sectional wrestling, sectional volleyball, boys and girls soccer, boys basketball, cross country. So we hosted all those different sectional events, which brings in a tremendous amount. Those are awarded annually. Doesn't necessarily mean we will get that many events next year. So there could be a large variation in that number. So this last year, 15-16, was $46,000. Next year, we are not hosting either soccer's sectionals. We're not hosting cross country sectionals. We are hosting basketball and a wrestling regional. So that number will be not nearly as large in this coming year. That's WIA, they award it, they try to, you know, spread the wealth, so to speak, to other people that put in for it. Every year you put in for it and they make a decision there. So that number is not something to rely on, like always being at that level, because that's really a year-to-year thing depending on how the WIA awards those events. Those are the two big things I wanted to point out. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
And two pieces of supplemental information that I believe was at your location was just the boys lacrosse report that wasn't in the packet. And then there was a question just with regards to breaking out the miscellaneous line from the football boosters, and those are the items that are at your seat. So those are the specific questions that came from the committee. Are there anything specific that the board would like to have Aaron specifically address? I mean, it's a lengthy report with lots of information, so he can walk through it in many different formats, but I think it may be the most effective way for us to approach it is if there are some specific questions that you may have that he can address.
Looking, and I was on the committee for a year, it was always fun looking at the end of year reports, and very big headache. On the football one, I gotta admit I was a little confused, so this extra information you were requesting would have been their expenses?
If you look on the football end of year report from the Touchdown Club, under major purchases / donations to the school district, number 5 was, they just have listed it as miscellaneous, 47.
Right.
So that's, members of the committee had asked for a more detailed reporting of that 47,000.
I gotta say, the one problem I had with their report was, not that I think there's anything, I know most of these funds are held at the school, right? I believe some of them are. I don't know if football is or not. But the one thing is that in looking at most of the reports, you know, they had dollar amounts and all this other stuff. On this one, every number's rounded off. And that made me a little quizzical about, I'm just surprised that everything came out to a great round number. And that made me think that maybe there's some level of reporting we're not seeing. And I don't know if that's an issue of concern for others or not, or how much independent the Touchdown Club is to the rest. But when I see all the other reports from like boys lacrosse and stuff, you know, it's like $12,774 for member fees. But when you see it from the Touchdown Club, it's concessions, $8,000. But concessions in boys lacrosse is $244. And to me, that's saying, and you know what, maybe this is okay, I don't know. But that just seemed a little bit odd to me that they were also perfectly rounded.
Mark?
This was a question I raised at the committee, and I think it is worth the board discussing. I can't overstate my appreciation of what the booster clubs do, but when it comes to the reporting, I would think for their well-being, as well as the kids, we need more transparency. I would think there'd be, for anything that's an expense, you know, to have a number as $1,000 as a general number, it seems awfully general. I would think it should be, and I don't know what the number is, Steve. I would maybe ask for your opinion on this, but we're seeing numbers 5, 6, 15,000 as a rounded number of an expense, and I don't think there's any untoward things that have happened, but I think with less specificity, it provides an opportunity that it puts the club in a bad position, and I think it puts the sports and the athletes in a bad position. And so I would like the board's reaction to, should there be greater requirement for specificity so it's more transparent?
It appears, I mean, that there's some discussion around, like, whether it's at spreadsheets or there's dialogue around this that happened both at the meeting as well as the same comments essentially from the two of them.
Yeah, we have clubs there right now that are held, where the funds are held by the district, so Steve and his staff really have those as, when you see our financial reports, those are part of those. You have other groups that are their own 501c3s who manage them as a separate entity from the school. One of the things that I think gets to one of your questions there, Mark, is, and it really gets to the discussion we had, I think, at the co-curricular committee, was consistency of reports and trying, and maybe potentially creating, and I think you mentioned this, Aaron, as we create maybe a spreadsheet or something of that nature that is kind of the template that everybody is given to really report out on and provide some specificity, for example, on things like a miscellaneous item where we asked for some additional information. So potentially that could get at what you're talking about, Mark, if we have some more consistency so you can see how those are. And I think it's also a point is to the degree of specificity the board wants, which I think is, to yours and Dave's point, is it a rounded number or is it a specific number per line item?
And I guess I would echo that sentiment in that a lot of individuals in the community are asked to donate or provide. And so to the extent that there may be a greater appreciation than just around this table for that type of information from the boosters, it would be appreciated, I'm thinking.
So
Well, to your
I
point-
hear all that, but then we get back to the point, is this rounded report what we would call sufficient or not? I gotta admit, I don't know. I don't know what our liability or anything is on this, especially if they're their own separate 501c3. In a weird way, we don't have a liability issue, but do we have a reporting issue or not?
Our responsibility.
I-
Or responsibility, whatever you
From my
want to
understanding, the reports also came about as we're just really trying to get a sense of how much money was being spent per the booster clubs on our students, and trying to get a total cost of programs was really, I think, where the reports originated from.
That's it, exactly.
And so I think that there's probably hasn't been specificity on what that number, if we should be a rounded number, et cetera, or if it's a specific number you're looking for. But the gist of the request from the board, I believe when that was at its inception, was just trying to get a sense of how much money are the booster clubs investing into our programs outside of what the district is putting into them.
So do we have a responsibility or requirement in any way?
We do not have any financial reporting requirements for an independent 501c3. So the football boosters, as an example, are an independent, legally set up 501c3 organization. Now, they do have reporting requirements that they have to follow, but on our end, for that organization, the answer would be no. But we do have organizations that we do handle all their funds for, including athletics. And in that case, yes, they are all reported on our financial reporting system. So it just depends on how the organization is set up. Many of them prefer to work directly through the school, which is fine. We're happy to do that. And many of them like to have their own separate organizations set up. But when they are separately set up, we as the school district do not have any financial reporting obligations to do anything for those separate checking accounts.
So is this a topic for further discussion and review then?
Well, then it would seem to me that if they want to round the numbers when they provide this to us, we really have no reason or anything to actually request or
Well-
need anything else.
Except there are some, in terms of our athletes, we need to be concerned about compliance with WIA eligibility rules. And so, do you get enough information so that you know anything spent is within compliance?
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting the information I need to be able to say to the WIA or say to someone, yeah, we're not violating any amateur rules set up by the WIA.
And that's an important piece to know, because if that's there, then that's a really important piece.
I see that as an essential function of Aaron's position.
Right.
Is as he's overseeing these, is making sure that we stay within compliance of the regulations that we need to keep our programs and our athletes eligible, and that's an aspect of it.
If the fundraising for Warrior Stadium moves forward, would there be any other reason we need anything more from the Touchdown Club? Not really. I mean, it's sort of like the sprinklers and stuff that have been done by soccer and all the others. They hand you a check. You really don't have a requirement to know how or what that check. Okay.
Any other questions for Aaron?
I did want to make a comment on one of the items that the committee discussed, and is the potential for community engagement around co-curricular programs. And so that's a topic of conversation that's continuing, and it might be something that we'll end up doing in the near term or next year or so. But it's as you said so eloquently at the beginning, your goal is to find out about the community and all of the organizations, and I think that the community would appreciate a dialogue on this topic. So appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, on to new clubs and organizations.
In your packet, you will see that there were two new clubs and organizations that were moved forward for consideration. These normally come to the board in the fall. That's normally, I think, by policy when they come before the co-curricular committee. Since we already had them this summer, and I think this is actually a much better timeline because it gives us an opportunity to really have things in place for the start of the school year. There's two clubs that were being requested. They're both student-driven. I know Brian Kirsten is here if there's any questions that may arise. But the Young Republicans Club and the debate team are two clubs that our students have an interest in generating at our school. You can see in your attached information the level of involvement and interest from our students. The committee forwarded these on a 3-0 vote for consideration by the board. And what we're asking for this evening is for your consideration to approve these for this school year.
So if we could have a motion to approve, and then we can have some discussion after that.
I move we approve the new clubs.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions about these two new clubs that are being proposed?
I just noticed in the packet there wasn't the letter from Brian on the Republican Club for some reason. Was that just an oversight?
Brian, I don't recall, to be honest.
I assume there was one.
There usually is one.
And just a question, what does TAR stand for?
Teenage Republicans.
Oh, okay. TAR. I used the other one.
They submitted it with both the Young Republican and the acronym for Republicans, so
Okay, so that's what.
I learned along the way there too, because I didn't know what that was.
I've never seen that one before.
I actually, what I had was just the cover letter for the debate team, but not for the other one. So, but Brian's here to answer any questions that you may have about it. I think it was a student-generated club where they were seeking out an advisor. One of the things that we anticipate is with the onset of a Republican club, there most likely will be a request for a Democrat club coming at some point in the future, of which we'd be amenable to bringing forward at that time. But at this point, these were the two that were brought forward, and I did not have in the packet or in my materials a cover letter on the Republican club.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the two club proposals?
So with the Republican Club, will that be within the club, any discussion and so forth? Obviously it'll get out through the school, but we're not gonna have signage and all this other stuff in the school one way or the other?
In terms of noticing minutes or political signage or?
Political signage.
In talking with Brian Bartnick. And
One way or the other.
Right. Well, and the reality of it is that there was indeed be the other. But the real focus, just to give you a little history here, is last year when we started our contact time, there were some students that came forward and were asking, if they could organize a Young Republican Club. They approached Brian Bartnick. Brian said, you'd be happy to chat with them about that. There was a couple of times that they came down and when that came to my attention, I said, I'm just going to make sure that if this is going to go forward, it's done in the appropriate way. Brian actually emailed me probably, I think, 2 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, when we had the initial meeting with the co-curricular committee. I had emailed him as well as Dave Carley and Alexis Hammondson to let them know that the discussion had occurred. The co-curricular level will be coming forward to the board for discussion. Brian's response to me was that he perceives that 90 to 95% of what they would be trying to engage in would be just either internal discussion, but primarily service type things that they could be engaged with in the community more than trying to sway individuals' political viewpoints or perspectives one way or the other. But to your question, Jack, I mean, we have student organizations that will notice meetings, but in terms of banners hanging, vote one way or the other in the Commons, that's not what I anticipated. Something if that were to crop up that I would certainly have discussions about as well.
in a lot of the school ones I've seen, their biggest thing becomes GOTV. Getting out to vote and letting students know how to register to vote, because we do have a lot of 18-year-olds who will be able to do it. That always seems to be the biggest thing they try to push. Which is funny, and when the couple schools I know in Dane County that have done it, the Democrats and the Republicans get together and do it together at the same table and get everybody registered, so. It's the one time they agree, which is fun.
Is there an opportunity, you know, there's a lot of discussion on civics. Is there an opportunity to bring that up, and that's how government works and things like that?
Yeah, I would anticipate that would certainly appropriate discussion to occur. I think again, too, a fair amount of that discussion occurs within the framework of the social studies curriculum as well.
Well, I appreciate that you gave our instructors a heads up too. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, there's a motion on the table for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next committee is the HR committee. You will see the minutes from our meeting in the packet. And the first item for consideration is the second reading of all the employment guidelines. And you will see that the request has been made to remove the reference to the payout of the bank points for future addition and discussion. So in other words, if we could do the second reading of all of the employment guidelines that were presented last month and remove that specific reference for the time being so that further discussion can occur at the budget and HR and then the full board level on this particular topic of bank points, that would be a motion to that we would be recommending from the HR.
If I can add something to that, Peggy. The HR committee spent quite a bit of time talking about the two options we had for points payout at retirement, the one being in addition to the pay aspect at retirement, and then the other part with contribution to the HRA. The conversation really came down to then some discussions around Fund 10 versus Fund 73 and just how those funds flow through and what are the impacts on the budget depending on which route you go. Steve and I had a bit of time to talk about it today, and we think it's something that it's a fair item for us to bring back with some more detailed information. It's not a simple answer that we can just share, I think, verbally here tonight and have full understanding of what we're actually trying to show. And so following kind of the process that we've used with items that have been of importance and related to pay, and with some of the questions that have arisen with regards to that, we think it's fair for us to really bring that report back through the budget committee for next month, and then we can bring this back to the full board for discussion. So our recommendation then from the HR committee would be for the approval of the employment guidelines as submitted, with the exception of the teachers' guidelines, to remove the piece temporarily that talks about the points payout at retirement. And we will address that here in the next iteration of talks with the budget committee and at a future board meeting. And then once that's approved, that can be inserted into the handbook and be effective for our retirees this year.
You need a motion?
Yes, it would be a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve of all the employment guidelines with the stipulation that we just outlined with respect to the teacher removal of bank points. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. The other item that's not listed as on our board book notes, but was in the minutes of the meeting, was further discussion of our superintendent evaluation. And so what we did want to do, if you have any questions on that, it's more of a discussion of what we would like to be pursuing for this year, but we would still continue working on improving basically the superintendent evaluation process. We appreciate the information that was received by board members in terms of answering the questions. Some of the things that we like about the current process are the discussions that we have, and appreciate kind of the scope of the entire job. However, the negatives to our current process were that things are too detailed, cumbersome, or generic. We don't set objectives or goals for the year. The timing doesn't seem to align very well with how maybe a better aligned process with respect to both district goals and objectives, but just also when is the right time to be setting goals versus this arbitrary time in February, and the lack of data. So I think that was a general theme that we've got from all of the feedback. And so the changes that we would like to be proposing, and that we actually voted at the committee level because I think Randy would have appreciated the fact that we wanted to endorse the idea of coming back to the board in September with 3 or 4 items of focus that are aligned with specific goals, as well as just for next year, we would continue the current tool, but have the addition of a can't judge or unable to evaluate, because not one of the other concerns is that we don't all know what he actually does in certain areas. And that would be the next steps. However, what would be continuing is we will continue work on deciding what a better timing for the whole process should be, determining the content of an evaluation tool to reflect essentially the management standards, which are called ISLIC standards, and more frequent kind of check-ins, so that it's not just a once a year at a weird time of the year that we're having these discussions. And then basically aligning this with our whole strategic planning process and district planning. So just wanted to give everyone kind of a heads up that that's what we would like to be doing for next year's evaluation, but the dialogue will continue. Randy's had discussions with individuals in his professional association, John Bales, many of you may or may not know, and was able to provide some insights on what other districts are doing, and what hasn't really worked in many places up to now. So if we can figure something out that works for Waunakee, I think that would be a good thing for us to do. Do you have any additions?
Just the point that you made about bringing back the 3 or 4 focused objectives, I think that's an important part for us to have for next year as we kind of tie together our strategic plan. Peggy and Julie and I have met a couple times over the summer, and my recommendation to the HR committee was for the 3 of us to meet again to really put together the first draft of those to present to you all in September. So once Julie's back from vacation, we'll set up that meeting and have a discussion about what those look like.
I guess, are there any questions or comments from the rest of the board? Okay, to be continued. Thank you very much. Okay, on to Facilities Committee. Minutes from the August, well, actually, no.
Yeah.
We don't have any minutes, you just met before this, so.
You mind if I take it, Jack, or do you want to
Go ahead.
All right. First item that we have in front of us tonight is the approval of Warrior Stadium civil engineering proposal. What we are looking for here is approval of the recommendation coming out of our committee. We are recommending Rutler Corporation to serve as the civil engineering firm to work with us on the development of the plan for renovating the Warrior Stadium area. Particularly, that includes a couple different things. One is the field, both as a grass field and as a turf field, so we have comparison data. Updates to the track, the lights, and the scoreboard. Those are the primary areas. There may be some additional areas that we will look at as alternates, particularly with regards to additional seating and storage and some of those items, which we will work with them on as well. So our recommendation tonight is for the Rutler Corporation. What that will provide us is the ability to work with them on the scope of the project, any alternates for the project, and get more specific costing that we can then utilize for our purposes as a district to be planning forward for a project for next summer, and also to be working with a community fundraising group that's raising the additional funds, or hopes to raise the additional funds to elevate the project to an artificial turf field. So that's the recommendation that came out of the committee. Any comments from the committee members with regards to that aspect?
If there are no other comments, then I'd ask for a motion to approve of the proposal, Rattler.
For Rattler Corporation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? One quick question for the benefit of the public. How long has it been since we last had an update on the turf or the field at Warrior?
Aaron, what?
An update in terms of checking the condition of the
Or,
field,
no,
Well,
actually doing a
when's the last time
renovation
we've
on
had
the
a
field.
renovation of, I mean, really, what's driving a lot of this is
Of
some
the-
of
of
the,
the-
yeah.
Field.
Oh, the actual playing field,
Yeah.
my understanding is in the 80s.
87, I
Last time
think.
we tried, was the last time we had some sort of update to the field. A few years back, they did try to do some work to it, but it proved not possibly, not feasible.
Okay.
Whether, Joe's owner would be able to explain it better. It had to do with trying to aerate and plug and core the field, and just feasibility that wasn't going to work.
The field itself was constructed in the mid-'80s, and what we've done in the last number of years is been under a turf management program to really extend the life of it and improve the turf as much as we possibly can with, I think we've done the coring of it, we've done slit seeding, we've done a lot of watering, and the fertilization and all of those different aspects has really extended the life of it. But we're really at a point now where we need to address the next step, which is the replacement of it. So we're looking at the two different proposals, one being the grass aspect of it, and two being if the community group can raise the funds to move it to a turf field. So those are the aspects we're starting with. The board will be informed as we walk through this process and as we receive information from Rattler in their designs, and especially as we start to get projected costing as far as and more hard numbers on what all of these renovations would cost.
Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Baseball dugouts.
Okay, baseball dugouts, this is a carryover from last month as well. We had, at the facilities committee, at least we had a discussion about improving our baseball dugouts. The Booster Club for the baseball team has funds available that they would like to make renovations and build new dugouts for both the varsity and our JV fields. What you see at your table is a revised memo from Spencer Lee, the baseball coach, that outlines the cost of that and different costs from grabber masonry, advanced concrete, and century fence. This would be completely a Booster Club paid-for project, and the discussion we had at the committee level was that construction would start sometime in September, possibly October.
Okay, if we can have a motion to approve or not, and then discussion after that.
I move we approve the proposal.
Second.
Mark, seconded by Jack. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Referendum update.
Just a few referendum updates. I will send out the date of the registration day for the intermediate school. So I think that'd be a great opportunity if you're available that day to really go through the school. It's a wonderful feeling to walk through that. I was telling someone it's been when you think back of when we started our conversations on our needs after a failed referendum, it's been 5 years to completion of that project. So it's been really a fun space to walk through. It's going to be an awesome place for our students to be learning. So I'll get that information off to you tomorrow. The other aspects of this are that the school will open on time. Staff were moving in last week. That was very exciting. Touring the heritage site this morning with Dan and members of our Findorf team. They've got quite a bit of work to do, but I think their comment was the majority of the workforce will be off-site by the end of the week, and they're starting the cleaning aspect. They were dusting upstairs when we were walking through this morning. So the cleanup is started. Some of the final touches are taking place, and all accounts are that we'll be ready to roll with things in a good time frame for our staff to move in and for school to start. A couple things that we are continuing to work on. I have updated the board on some water infiltration pieces that we're working on at the new intermediate school. There's really two aspects to that. The first is just how we're handling the water on-site, and the second is as it runs off-site. We've really split that into two different projects. We have our engineers working on proposals that we can take back through the county for final approval. We're feeling like that is moving forward. We're also, Roxanne Johnson from Professional Engineering, local firm, has also been working with us on water running off the site and working with our neighbors to the site there on what options we have just to make sure that we are controlling the water that's coming off the site and seeing how we can be amenable to any concerns that are existing there. So those two are, both those pieces are in process. We will need to be making some decisions in the very near future. Steve and I will be watching and working very closely with that with regards to any additional costs, and particularly as it relates to our contingency dollars, et cetera. The other pieces that I just want to bring to your attention that we're working on right now, as we did our walkthrough at Heritage this morning, there's two items that we are problem solving through right now. One is that we have some playground equipment that has been reversed as far as when you think of an elementary playground, you have K2 and 3-5. Some of the playground equipment is reversed as far as where it was set. So we're working on a solution to make sure that that gets corrected. The second piece is just some coloring of the carpeting in the lower level that doesn't line up with some of our color schemes as we had intended. So we're working through it as problem solving through a few of those items. Everybody's aware of them, and we have a construction meeting tomorrow to further vet those out. But otherwise, I think other than the items that I just highlighted, this has really been a very smooth project. I think as Herb and Joe alluded to earlier in their reports, working with all of our team members from Epstein, Ewing to Findorf and our subcontractors has been great. That we're working as a team to really try to bring these to fruition and have things ready for the beginning of school. The one piece when you look at the intermediate school as you go out there, the school will be ready to roll on day one. The outside landscaping and some of those finishing pieces will probably go into next spring. So there'll be aspects of it that will be able to be planted. We'll have grass growing this fall yet, but some aspects of it will move into next spring as well. So, any questions on any of those?
I walked through the site on the weekend, and again, it's not done, but I don't know if there's a plan for kids walking in. You know, you got the main boulevard going in. Where will the kids walk that walk in? Is there walkways? Because they can't walk down to their boulevard. And then as you continue to go in, because I walk, and
right.
You have to walk over there's no walkers. It just was a concern and maybe it's not done. Maybe there's walkways on the side of the boulevard.
Yeah. Let me find that out, Joan.
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture it as I'm sitting here and I just can't visualize it.
And the
so.
bikers too, where do the bikers go?
Right.
They're all gonna cross Eldora and Woodland.
Right.
The village is putting in one of those signs that they have on
Right.
cue where you push the button and
Yeah,
it lights up.
yeah.
And we're gonna be doing curb cuts at that location.
But then will there be sidewalks all the way up to
She's
the
talking about
school?
on the school
On the
site down to
site.
the school.
That
That I can't answer. Yeah,
Well,
I'll find that
is the
out.
spot where they will, and there will be a full-time crossing guard at that location to assist.
Because then, you know, the road curves,
Right.
but even when you're in the parking lot, because I parked in the parking lot then, I didn't know where to walk.
Sure. And some of that I think is being
Yeah.
completed, but I'll ask that question, Joan, because I can't visualize it right now, what that looks
Because
like.
there will be a lot of kids walking.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But it is set up for walkers, bikers, and
I
car
would
traffic.
hope,
And as
yeah.
Steve had said, that we worked with the village to try to make sure that that was all amenable for those crosswalks. But I have to ask that question, I don't know if yet.
Yeah, yeah. So I biked in there too, and
Yeah.
need your mobile
Good
bike.
question, good question.
Any other comments or questions from you? Okay, consent agenda. If you want to just make a couple comments, Randy?
Just with regards to the consent agenda, this just as a reiteration of what I mentioned when we adjusted the agenda. Items F, G, and H should be handled as a separate consent item because those need a roll call vote. The other items can go as the regular consent agenda items. What we have been trying to do is this to streamline some of the aspects of our agenda and trying to make more room for reports. We're moving a few different items into the consent agenda aspect of it. You'll see Steve's financial reports in there. So if there's ever a point where you have questions about any of these items, it's certainly an opportunity that at the consent agenda you have the opportunity to ask them. So it's not meant as to prevent that. But it also, I think it just can help us to streamline some of the work that we do as we put the agenda together. So tonight's consent would actually require 2 votes. It also provides the opportunity right now, if there's anything that wants to be pulled from the agenda, that can be handled separate.
Okay, so first of all, with respect to items A to G, we'll handle that part of the consent agenda first. I mean A to E, I'm sorry.
A to E.
A to E, which are the ones that don't require a roll call. Need a motion to approve of those items, or if anybody wants to pull as a separate item, any individual items off for separate consideration, now would be the time.
So is that where we pull the?
Yep, if you wanted to pull something in, say, either the checks, skips, field trips, any of the staff recommendations.
Pull the updated course or
Co-curricular.
co-curricular.
Should we also eliminate D, since we are not
Yeah,
considering
and
that
D is
tonight?
not, shouldn't be on the agenda either.
Correct. D is not moved forward tonight, so that D is not an active item this evening.
So it's A, B, C, and
A,
E.
B, C, and E, and Jack, you're asking to pull co-curriculars.
That's correct.
Okay, so the motion is,
To
from Jack,
approve,
is to approve, except pulling the, are you then making a motion to approve everything but pulling those 2 aside?
Yeah,
Are we pulling that
Oh, that's
co-curricular
correct.
aside?
That's
Okay.
correct.
that's right.
Is there a second?
second.
Okay, we'll give it to Mark. Okay, any discussion on items A, B, C, or D? Or E, sorry. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The item that then we have the co-curricular recommendations. I need a motion to approve of the co-curricular recommendations.
But do you want to pull those 2?
I want to pull the head coach for soccer and the head coach for baseball
For a separate vote?
for a separate vote.
Okay, so, make a motion for anything but those 2?
Yes.
Okay, so motion on the table to approve the co-curricular recommendations, but pulling 2 individuals out for separate consideration. Is there a
You meant women's soccer, girls soccer?
Girls soccer.
Yeah.
Is that what I said?
No, you said
No.
soccer.
Soccer.
Girls soccer. Thank you. Girls soccer.
Okay,
Girls soccer head coach.
you got that, Rebecca?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, motion to approve of those 2 individuals that have pulled up for separate consideration.
I think we're doing
You
each
should
one
do
separately.
Separately?
Yeah.
Separately? Okay. So first of all, with respect to a motion to approve of the girls soccer coach. Is there a motion to approve the girls soccer coach?
Motion to approve the girls soccer coach.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I think with some of the highlights that we've heard about and seen within the program, I will be voting no for the head coach for the girls soccer team.
I will also be voting no.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the girls soccer coach?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, 4-2, motion carries. Any other one from this?
Boys baseball.
Okay, motion with respect to the boys' baseball coach.
I move that we hire Spencer Lee as the boys' baseball coach.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Understanding some of the things that have gone on the field, I think with the tenure of a coach like that, I think he should be able to handle situations. So I would be voting no.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Okay, there are 3 items on the consent agenda which require a roll call vote, and what we can do is make the motion to approve of all of those. The first one is a resolution for a district expulsion officer, that we actually authorize the appointment of an independent hearing officer for the year. The next one is to appoint the hearing officer, that being Carl Marquardt. And then the third one is to appoint a medical advisor, that'd be Dr. Bill Ranum for the district. So is there a motion for those 3 items?
Motion to approve.
Second. Oh,
Okay. Well, you keep it, how about we'll give it to Dave this
I can't give away things anymore.
time. Any discussion or comments on those 3 items? We'll need a roll call vote on that one. Rebecca?
Dave?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Peggy?
Aye.
And Julie is absent.
Yep. Motion carried. Okay, on to item 11. Board business, reference to some upcoming workshops and regional meetings.
If you'll just take a look at the regional meetings that are coming up in October 6th. If you can just let Rebecca know if that's something that you'd be interested in attending. We'll bring this back again at the September meeting as a reminder. It's just something to kind of get on your radar if you are interested in attending the Region 12 meeting.
If we're interested but can't make the date, can we go to a different district?
I believe you can. Yes, that has happened in the past.
The only difference in the program is they usually give an update from that region, but as far as the program and the update from
Right.
WCSD is the same.
I was looking at the 13th of the bills.
Yeah, and then the only other thing is that if there is a vote for certain, like a representative for that CISA, for that WASB region, that's an item which only if you're a member of that region, you would be voting for. But that's the only thing. I don't think we have Nancy still on for our region at this point.
And then the other thing is just keeping your eye on the January 18th to the 20th is the convention in Milwaukee. We have already reserved a bank of rooms. And so if you are interested in attending that, let Rebecca know. We probably have a month or so before we need to finalize those, so we'll bring that back in September as well. And so if you just review your calendars and see who is interested in attending, so we can get
What is the date of that?
January 18th to the 20th.
Yeah, and then what generally will happen is WASB has been sending out notices that it's coming and the rooms are available. And so this was an opportunity just to let everybody know. Registration isn't open for individuals yet, I don't believe, and you'll all get messages on that as well as information on the workshops, pre-convention workshops as well, so. And generally, it's Wednesday, the first day, the afternoon, I think, of the first day of the convention is when the delegate assembly is. So that's when Gary would be representatives.
When is it?
It's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So when I believe it's going to be Wednesday afternoon. It would be the first day, was that the 18th?
Do they house a
It's the
whole
19th, or 18th, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Potawatomi. Wow, you get in trouble saying that there.
All right.
Okay. So then, the other item is a proposed WASB resolution. Actually, this information is in front of you. If you remember at the June meeting, I had shared a request that I had received for our district to consider submitting a WASB resolution. At that point, it was like specific to music and the arts. Based on feedback from that meeting and as well as own, and reflection on what is, I think, appropriate for us as a school board, I have basically drafted up a copy of a proposed resolution which, in looking at current resolutions that are in the book, and once again, a copy of the book is available in that little cabinet, the board cabinet, or it's available online. What I'm proposing to reflect the intent of well-rounded education is that we instead change some existing resolutions in the book because basically resolutions remain in force unless amended or repealed. So my suggestion would be that we amend existing either one or both current resolutions to reflect the language that you'll see in the attached, which is something similar to the WASB supports well-rounded education as an educational goal and adopted the ESSA definition, which replaces core academic subjects language. So I know not everybody's had a chance to read this, but typically what happens is there is a proposed resolution, so the top section would be proposed language. And then you have to provide kind of rationale, background and rationale as to why you want to be proposing this for the delegate assembly. And so what I would ask is if this is something that the board would be interested in moving forward. And if so, perhaps if there's any changes that you want to have made, basically I would ask that by the September meeting, a final draft be available, because I think we can meet the September 15th deadline then in terms of submitting it. So I realize not everybody had a chance to read it, but does this kind of reflect the discussion that we had at the last meeting? This is something that you'd be interested in submitting to the delegate assembly for 2017?
I would say yes, as far as submitting it. I would suggest a change, though, in that, I mean, by tying it to ESSA, I mean, that's good in the rationale, providing that, it was done bipartisan and everything like that. But I wouldn't put that in the actual language of the resolution, because if the ESSA changes, did we just suddenly change what we were supporting, which...
Makes sense, yep. And
come November, the ESSA could be changed by January, and we may not then find the new language acceptable.
Good point. Okay, so then what we could do is say, supports well-rounded education as an education goal and adopt the following definition. I mean,
something, yeah, supports well-rounded education as an educational goal, as defined by, and then you provide the definition.
Okay.
But
yeah,
don't put.
good catch. Yes, I hear you.
Don't put the reference in the definition.
Got it, okay. And what I actually like about it is that it's actually talking. I mean, I happen to agree with the way that this has been drafted, and like I said, then like you had said, basically, when it comes to, hey, well, this is bipartisan support for this kind of thing. And then basically take away the source. Well, actually, the source can stay in there.
No, I would take away the source because it may not exist in 1 or 2 years, or whenever the next education law pops up.
Okay.
But I would put that source down in the background, and then
okay.
say the definition is provided by,
Perfect.
or something similar.
Yep. Yes, any other? I know it's, so if we can then, what I'll do is I'll make that change. If there's any other thoughts that people have on other changes, how would we suggest perhaps sending them to Randy or to Rebecca? Rebecca? Okay, just, okay, and then they can forward them to me and I'll make sure that things get drafted in a way that reflects all of that, so. And in terms of the agenda, this has to be approved by the board at the next meeting. I mean, so it is technically an action item that has to be taken, so. Okay. Thank you.
So then do we get a copy before the board meeting?
Yeah, you would.
Okay.
So in other words, if we can provide some feedback.
I think you should give a date line.
I don't know, when's our next meeting? September, let's see. Well, how about by the end of
Next
August?
week.
By September 1st, how about that? Because that's the first day of school.
Yeah.
If you can get information back to,
That gets you before Labor Day.
yep,
So board meeting is the 12th.
Yep,
So
okay.
We'll be preparing the packet the next week.
okay, so if you could get any suggested changes to Rebecca by the first day of school, September 1st.
Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, future agendas?
One meeting we need to schedule tonight, I think we've had other ones already on the docket. That's for the Budget Committee. That's Gary, Julie, and Joan. I'm going to recommend 4:30 on the 29th. So we already have a facility meeting at 5:30 that Gary will be at. So would 4:30 on the 29th work for Gary, Julie, Joan? I can check with Julie. So Joan, Gary.
Is that where you're gonna be talking about the points?
Yeah.
Is it permissible for other members to attend, even though I don't get to vote?
Yeah, you can do that.
Yes, and you can't contribute to conversation.
Right, yes. You
I'll
can.
hide in the back.
Can't make crazy faces.
Yes, we've had that.
I can't
Yes,
hold up
okay.
protest signs.
There you go.
Nothing?
Jeez.
It's a tough crowd.
Does that work for you, okay, Joe? Figured that gets us back to back with facilities, so you only have to be here once. Does that work for you, Steve?
Yep.
Good. That's all we needed.
Okay, no need to go back into closed session, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Can I just ask, is the HR meeting on? the-
We may not have one.
So that hasn't been determined for sure?
Yeah, and I don't think we're,
Question is, Connie, about the HR meeting for September.
Yeah, we discussed potentially not holding that meeting and waiting to get more information on our
Perfect.
yep, so we'll probably, so we won't have a September meeting.
Right.
And when is the October?
Oh, I do too. No,
It'll be October.
I don't wanna
No, that's my
paragraph summary.
summary, yeah.
I have October 4th.
Is it possible to change that? I'm out of town that week.
That'd be perfect.
If we, can we do it the next, well, then we're up to the board meeting.
What date are you looking at, Joan?
I'm out of town. I'm back late in the day on the 6th, so I could meet on Friday, the 7th.
Or we could have the prior week, maybe? Because we're not
I
gonna
am
have a September.
actually gone that whole week also.
The 7th is fine.
Okay.
It's not
Not for you. Okay.
So the week of September 19th?
I could meet that week, or would it be possible just to meet the morning of the 10th? I know that's the day of the board meeting.
that. Why don't you let me send?
Okay, well, yeah,
All right.
she'll send out something.
So Connie, I'm gone the week of the 26th through the 6th.
Okay, September 26th through October 6th.
Correct.
Okay.
How's October 8th work for you?
Great, I love Saturday.
There you go.
And then we can talk about it at the September meeting.
All right.
Regular board.
Oh, the regular,
Yeah, we have a
still have
September regular.
September together, no worries.
Okay.
You were looking for church?
Anything else for the good of the cause? Okay, now, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Back and go. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. 20 to 9.
Whoa, this is a record.
I have kept my campaign promise to have a school